Hi, my name is Christine Godinez. This is my third storytelling performance for Info 281 at San Jose State University. I'm going to be telling an adaptation of The Witches by Roald Dahl. I would like to tell you about a story when I was a child. I would first like to begin by telling you about witches. When I say witches, you probably think Harry Potter, cute little witches dressed up for Halloween. Those aren't the witches I'm talking about. I'm talking about real witches that live around us. You may think I'm telling you a story, a crazy, fantastic story, but that's not it. This is a true story about real witches. Real witches can be your school teacher, your doctors, your neighbor next door. It's always an older woman who's very, very kind and friendly to children. But there's certain telltale signs that can let you know that she's a witch. You just need to know what to look for. Real witches are bald, completely bald as a boiled egg. But they wear wigs. So you need to pay attention because the wigs make their heads sweat. And you see real witches, they go like this constantly because it gives them a rash. Now, witches also wear gloves. They wear gloves because they don't have fingernails. They actually have long, disgusting claws to scratch children with. You can also tell a witch by the pupils of their eyes. If you look very closely, you'll see the pupil of their eyes is not black like yours and mine. They change color. They're purple. They have fire. But they also wear contacts, so sometimes you can't notice them by their eyes. They don't have toes. Most women enjoy pointy, fancy shoes, but witches, the tips of their feet are square, so those can be very uncomfortable for them, but they still squeeze their feet in there because they don't want you to know that they are a witch. Witches hate children with the passion of 1,000 burning suns. They love to find recipes and magic brews to turn children into the things that adults hate most. My grandmama told me a story of witches that turned her friend into an otter that would damage their lake. So the parents, not knowing that their child had been turned into an otter, killed him. It was torture for the children, but it made the witches so happy. So I will tell you about the story when I was a boy, what happened to me. When I was a young child, I lived with my grandmama. My parents had passed away, and I had gone to stay with her in Norway. Well, it soon came out that in my father's will that I should live with my grandmama, but we must live in England. And I was so frustrated. I didn't want to move to England. I wanted to stay in Norway with my grandmama in her cottage cabin. But still, we had to do what we had to do, so grandmama took me on a vacation. We went to England, and we stayed at a grand hotel. It was beautiful. And I snuck in my 2 little pet mice. Well, when the hotel found out about this, they were very upset. But I love them so. So I thought if I trained my mice, then I could prove that they were pets, and we can go and hide. And then I could say, well, they're trained mice, so they're pets, so you have to let them stay. So one day, I went to go find a room to train my pets. I looked around different rooms, and on the front of a grand ballroom said, RSPCC, strictly private. This room is reserved for the annual meeting of the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. Well, I figured this is a great place to go. What wonderful women that they would do this. So I went inside and I found a back corner behind a shade, and I sat down and I began to train my mice. I taught them how to walk along little ropes and how to flip and do tricks. And then I heard a noise. I sat very quietly for fear that the hotel management would find me with my mice and we would be kicked out. Or worse, they would kill my mice. They were my pets and I loved them. So I sat quietly and I listened, and it was the women of the RSPCC. Well, there could be worse places, and if anything happened, I knew that they would protect me, because who doesn't love to protect children more than the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children? As a matter of fact, I think when I'm done with my mice, I'll ask them to come and speak at my school. I think they would enjoy that a lot, and so would the other children. There's a mean teacher there. I think they could teach her something. So anyways, as I sat there hiding and I heard them come in, I heard lots of noise that I couldn't quite understand what was happening. And I looked up from behind the curtain and I saw a woman walk up on the stage. And she asked a woman who was standing near the door, "Is the door locked?" Well, that was very odd. She sounded very angry. And I looked at the door to the grand ballroom, and the woman had put chains around the knobs, preventing anyone from getting in or out. And then, when she responded to the woman on the stage saying yes it was, then the woman on the stage said, "You may take off your wigs!" What? They had wigs? And then you see the woman take off her wig, and she had a mask too. And she pulled the mask off and the wig, and when she turned back, she had the ugliest face, the giantest nose, and a bald head. They were witches. Then as the woman who stood on the stage started to yell, "You may take off your gloves!" And they began to take off their gloves, and I saw what Grandmama had told me about. They had giant claws. She yells, "Take off your shoes!" And they took off their shoes, and none of them had toes. Well, I figured at this point, the woman on the stage must have been the woman that Grandmama had told me about, the Grand High Witch. After they had shed everything that made them look like human beings, and I sat there shaking for fear that they would find me, because Grandmama had said they could smell clean boys, and I had taken a shower that morning, and she said that clean children smelled like dog's droppings, and I thought for sure I was about to get caught. Then the Grand High Witch goes into a story, and she tells them that she has just discovered a potion that she calls Formula 86 Delayed Action Mouse Maker. Well, I couldn't figure out what she was talking about, and next thing you know, a young boy comes into the room. You hear the door shake. He says, "It's me, let me in, I want my candy." So the woman at the door lets the boy in, and he says, "Where's my candy you promised me?" But the witches had gotten dressed again, so he hadn't noticed that they were witches. Well, the woman on the stage, the Grand High Witch, hands the boy a piece of candy, and he eats it, and he can't understand why he feels so ill all of a sudden. It turns out the potion for Formula 86 Delayed Action Mouse Maker was inside of the chocolate. It was part of the witch's plan to teach him, to show all of her friends, all of her congregation of witches, that this is how she plans on turning children into mice. And instantly, the boy was a mouse. And he scurried away, and I wished I could save him, because he ran under the chairs and the witches were stomping their feet around because they wanted to kill that boy or mouse. But they didn't catch him, and he hid behind one of the legs of the chairs, shaking and scared. Well, I lived in fear that for sure they were going to find me now. the main witch stood up on the stage and she said, "Now, go back to your rooms and we will discuss what we are going to do and how are we going to get rid of all of these children in all of England." And then the witches started to shuffle out. And just when I thought they were going to make it to the door without spotting me, one witch says, "I smell dog droppings." She was talking about me. And the other witches stopped and they said, "Well, there couldn't be anybody in here. We checked the room when we came in." And she said, "No, I smelled the dog droppings." And she walked around. And soon she came upon where I was. And they ripped the curtain back. And there I was. Well, they did. I tried to run and they got me. And next thing you know, they gave me the potion. And I couldn't understand what was happening to my body. It felt like my skin was turning inside out and all my bones were breaking. And then I was a mouse. And I ran and I scampered. And they went chasing me and they didn't catch me either. I hid behind the stage. Soon, the witches just left because they knew. Well, they figured, what could I do? I was only a mouse. So they left and I ran and I looked for Grandmama and I found her in the room and I said, "Grandmama, it's me. It's me." And she says, "Oh boy, what has happened to you?" And so I told her that I had gone to hide to train my pet mice. And the Grand Witch was at the hotel and they were having a meeting and they had a formula that they were going to give to all of the children of England to get rid of them. Well, Grandmama's heart was broken, but she was tough. She was the toughest lady I had ever met, and she said, "We will not stand for this." And Grandmama and I came up with a plan on how to get back at those witches. She helped me, and I snuck into their room, into the Grand High Witch's room, and I found the potion. And I snuck it away, and I took it up to her, into our room. And we went to the kitchen. Grandmama sat at the dining room table, and I went and snuck in, and the witches were all having lunch there. And I heard in the kitchen that they were going to have soup. And there was a special large pot on the stove for the Grand High Witch, for the witches, because there were so many in the party and they were all having the same thing, so the chef decided to cook them their own batch of soup. This worked out perfectly for me. So I took the potion with my little paws and my tail, still learning how to work all of them, and I poured it into the soup. And then I scampered back out of the kitchen and into Grandmama's lap, where she placed a napkin on top of me, but let me sit up and look, because I wanted to watch to see what happened to the witches. And as we sat there, me and Grandmama talked a little, but not too much, because people would wonder who she was talking to. We sat there and waited as the witches slurped their soup. They looked very dainty and very beautiful, and nobody knew how disgusting they were. So they sat there eating their soup, and then suddenly they started to scream. There was screaming and panic and jumping around, and you could see steam coming off of their bodies. And then next thing you know, there was just piles of clothes everywhere. And the room was going bananas, and everybody was screaming and running, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. And all of the witches were turned to mice. So suddenly there's mice running everywhere, and many adults don't like mice. So they started jumping and stomping and going around and jumping on the mice. Grandmama and me, well, we took off out of there. We wanted no part of that. And we went back to our room, and Grandmama packed up our belongings, put me in her handbag, and we left. We went back to Grandmama's cottage in Norway, and we talked, and Grandmama said, "My dear boy, I have no way to turn you back into a boy. And we've just gotten rid of the Grand High Witch, and even if I could force her, I couldn't get her to tell me how to turn you back into a boy." Well, I told her, "Grandmama, you are old, and you won't live very much longer. And I'm only a mouse, and mice don't live that long. So by my calculations, we have about the same time left together. So I'm fine. I will stay in Mouse, and I will stay with you, Grandmama, because I wouldn't want to live anywhere or with anyone else. Grandmama was very happy to hear this. And together we sat. And after a few days, we sat sitting there. We both came to each other, and it seems we had the same idea. We had decided that we were going to go to another area of Norway to go try to find the other Grand High Witch of Norway, and maybe use another bottle of potion we had swiped from the first Grand High Witch to go and get rid of them. The end.